Welcome to the UN Brief. I'm your host, Maya Plants. We interviewed Matthew Baldwin, Deputy Director General at the Mobility and Transport Directorate at the European Commission in Brussels. He's also the chair of the advisory board at the UN Road Safety Fund. The EC Mobility and Transport Directorate just announced a new EU mission during COP26 that will be funded by the new cycle of the EU funding program for research and innovation, Horizon Europe, with a seed fund of $350 million allocated to make 100 cities climate neutral. The private sector will play a role too, of course, to finance this transition. And a call for expression of interest will be launched by the European Commission by the end of November. Companies, startups that are creating next-generation software and hardware to make cities climate neutral are the target. And they can work with mayors and local government to actually implement the Sustainable Development Goals. Keep your eyes peeled and watch my interview with Matthew Baldwin, who is at the European Commission Pavilion in Glasgow at the Conference of Parties COP26, the United Nations Conference for Climate Change. Thank you for watching the UN Brief. I'm your host, Maya Plants. And don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for watching.
It's the big day with all the leaders here, the Leaders Summit, which is very exciting, I think, for all the delegates. There's a real buzz in the air, and I'm pleased to say there's a great buzz here at the EU Pavilion. Lots and lots of activities taking place, and of course the negotiations going on at the same time, and we're hoping for the best possible outcome.
And also you have launched today a program to support cities. Tell us a bit about the program.
Well, thank you for raising that. It's a really exciting program. In fact, it's the most exciting thing I've ever worked on at the European Commission in my long career there. If you step back and look at what we're trying to achieve on climate change, we need to be a climate neutral continent by 2050. We're looking for a 55% reduction in our greenhouse gas emissions in the European Union by 2030. That's a huge task. And cities are incredibly well placed to take the lead on that. They're only 4% of our landmass. 75% of us live in cities, going to rise to 85% by 2050. And the cities account for around 70% of our carbon emissions. But aside from that, cities are incredibly well placed to lead because they have such ambition. If you talk to mayors right across Europe, indeed right across the world, they have the ambition to go further, not just to tackle greenhouse gases, but because they want to get the cleaner air, the reduced congestion, the lower energy bills for their citizens. And the citizens, frankly, are buzzing as well. So what we're trying to do in the European Union is test the concept of getting all the way to climate neutrality in cities. We're inviting 100 cities to come forward and do this by 2030. It's a tall order, but we're going to work in partnership with them in the spirit of research and innovation. This is a Horizon Europe project of the European Union, and we'll be launching the call for expression of interest later this month.
That's fantastic news. Also because part of the drive towards an agreement and several commitments that will be made in these 2 weeks now, it will be related to delivery, implementation. And no one is better positioned than cities actually to do that. So tell us a little bit what are the steps that will be taking place now in terms of supporting the cities. You mentioned or Horizon Europe, that there will be a call for expression of interest. So these are the cities that can come to see if they can raise funds, or are you also going to give support, technical support, or it's more a broker of sorts? The European Commission will be a broker of sorts between the companies that have the innovations that can be adopted by the cities.
Well, a lot of those things, Maya, of course, will be completely relevant. But look at it this way. we are driving with our emissions trading system the carbon price. So that's having putting a major squeeze, if you like, on carbon. We are asking vehicle manufacturers to go much further in terms of their fleet emissions. We're building much stronger alternative fuels infrastructure systems to enable those new electric and hydrogen vehicles of all kinds to go around. What you need in addition to that is a bottom-up, if you like, a micro approach, looking at what each city needs or each region needs in order to get to carbon neutrality, to climate neutrality. And it's in all cases, it's a tall order. But if you look at the specifics, what some cities need to work on mobility, some cities need to work on the heating and cooling of their building or the refurbishment of their building stock. Every city is different. So we're putting together an innovation-based package through a new consortium, which was formed last month called the Net Zero Cities Consortium, with the leading lights of climate change work in all these different areas, including on finance. And when we've chosen the 100 cities, and we want cities from all across Europe, from the east and from the south of Europe, as well as from the west and the north, we want cities from each of our member states to join this program. Then we'll work up with them what we call the climate city contracts. This is where the cities set out how they'll get to climate neutrality and set out their related investment plans. And that's the point you rightly raised, Maya. It's going to take a lot of money. And all the money that we're going to need doesn't exist in EU funds or in national funds. And we certainly don't expect the cities to ask their citizens to pay for it. So where's it going to come from? The private finance markets. There's tremendous energy in the private finance markets looking for climate neutrality. It's one of the great buzzwords here in Glasgow about climate finance. We think that if we can set up these programs, these cities will be extremely well placed to be landing grounds for a lot of this global money looking for climate neutrality, which is floating around the world. And it's a very, very exciting prospect. It'll be tough work and a real challenge, but we're kicking off the work on that this month.
Yes, finance for sustainable development is also a central topic in these coming weeks in Glasgow. So what you see is the convergence of the private sector with state actors and civil society going to be able to show us the possibilities in terms of really delivering, because there is a lot of discussion about what do they mean by financing the sustainable development goals. The private sector is very concerned with returns, right? But return on investment now has acquired a new dimension. So what is the role of this event in bringing together these different sectors?
Well, this is a great crossroads, a great meeting place of all these different trends. There are a number of amazing pavilions devoted to the Sustainable Development Goals. And of course, the private sector, if I hear them right, they're looking not just for financial rates of return, they're looking for climate rates of return as well. That's why I think there's money out there which is ready to accept a lower rate of return in exchange for full climate neutrality. You know, a few years ago, people were starting to think about quote unquote reducing their carbon footprint. Now I think the ambition levels are much higher. All you have to do is Google climate neutral finance option, and you can see just how many different funds there are starting to form around it. So it's an exciting moment for sustainable finance too. The European Union is launching a whole new set of proposal on sustainable finance around the taxonomy, around green bonds, these new and exciting vehicles which cities are launching across the world, but particularly in the European Union, to raise money for specific climate neutral projects. And I think this will only work if there's a partnership approach between the public and the private sectors in order to ensure that there is enough funding and finance for cities. We're ready to put some money into it. We're putting Horizon Europe money into shaping and creating the right kind of innovation projects to kick this off, the deep demonstration projects that the cities need to show how they're going to get to climate neutrality. Thereafter, we're going to need a lot of money from the private sector, and I really think it's ready to flow.
So how much is going to be allocated? Do you have a number already of the 100 billion, which is the actual amount of funding available, right, for Horizon Europe? How much?
Well, Horizon Europe that's covering a whole range of different things. Initially, we've got 300 million to use as seed money, if you like. and we'll be allocating that in the next couple of years through Horizon Europe work programs. But that's a good illustration of just how, you can't rely just on EU money to get there alone. There's a very interesting study by Material Economics, which estimated that for an average city of a population size of around 100,000 people, you need about 1 billion euros, $1.2 billion to get to climate neutrality. That kind of money is not available.
The whole transformation, the whole transformation cycle, the conversion
exactly
to sustainability.
Cities need to transform in all sorts of ways. Yeah, exactly. Yes. Sorry, I interrupted.
Finally, how does it feel to be back in person in conferences?
Oh, that's amazing. I think there's an extra buzz coming from that. Of course, we have to be super careful about the COVID protocols. I take my mask off because I'm in a little room here in our EU pavilion to talk to you. But there's I think a strong sense of responsibility. We all had to take a PCR test before we could come into the blue zone. We're taking daily lateral flow tests. But I think, it's great to be back in person. Even if we have to remember to put our trousers on now, we're going to conferences again.
Thank you very much, Matthew Baldwin. A pleasure speaking with you.
I'm with you, Miles.
Thank you for watching the UN Brief. I'm your host, Maya Plants. And don't forget to subscribe. You can find us also on Twitter @Maya Plants, or you can subscribe to our newsletters at www.theunbrief.substack.com. Thank you for watching the UN Brief.